I'm Alexis.
And I'm Tiffany, and we're the hosts of Legit KidLit, a video series where we get to see into the secret and silly lives of authors and illustrators.
We love to celebrate and promote books, but most of all, we want to say hey to all you readers out there trying to find that right book for you. We hope that you can find some new reads after today. Hello, Josh Allen. We are so happy to have you here on Legit KidLit, episode 46.
I'm so happy to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me. Sure, I'm the author of this book right here, Out to Get You, 13 Tales of Weirdness and Woe, with 13 creepy stories by me and 13 ghoulish illustrations by Sarah J. Coleman. I'm also the author of a book which will come out on August 31st, 2021, titled Only If You Dare, 13 Stories of Darkness and Doom, also with 13 illustrations by Sarah Coleman. And I guess one really fun thing about the books that I write is this book looks like this when the lights are on, but it looks like this when the lights are off, because both books that I've written glow in the dark.
I love that they glow in the dark. We need more books that glow in the dark.
I love so much that my books glow in the dark. That wasn't my idea. I can't take any credit for that. Holiday House, my amazing publisher, I think came up with that. And when they told me that my first book would glow in the dark, like 10-year-old me was so happy. I'll show you one of the illustrations that Sarah has done for my first book. Here it is right here. This is, I think, maybe my favorite one in the book. This is from a story about a girl who feels like she's being watched. So if you look really closely, you can see eyeball shapes in her bed sheets. And there are eyeball shapes that Sarah put into the wood grain behind her pillow. And if you look really close at this little girl's hair, there's even eyeball shapes that Sarah's added to her hair, which I think is such a wonderful, spooky detail. And this is one thing that Sarah does so brilliantly in the artwork in the books. She adds these just little kind of spooky details throughout. Gives a little kind of fun thing for kids to look for as they're reading the stories and looking at the illustrations. I feel really, really lucky that I've been able to work with Sarah on not just one book, but two, that we've been able to do two books together, because her artwork, I really just can't say enough about it. I just love what she's able to do with my stories. Her illustrations kind of understand my stories, and when they work in concert with my stories, make them even creepier. And so working with an illustrator it's been one of the funnest things about the process.
All right, let's keep this spooky thing going. Can you tell us a scary story featuring one of your favorite monsters?
Okay, sure. So you know how I've been thinking a lot about how, when you're in 5th grade and you get to the end of the school year and everybody goes off to summer vacation, and then when you come back to 6th grade, like, all these kids have completely changed over the summer. They're completely transformed. Like, this girl here grew 4 inches over the summer, and like this kid who was kind of a skinny dweeb suddenly has a mustache when he comes to 6th grade. Like, all these kids over the summer, they've like completely changed, right? Physically. It's like they've been replaced almost with somebody else. And so imagine, here's a story I'm working with at the moment. Imagine that you come to the first day of 6th grade, you sit down in your biology class, and a kid walks in who you don't think you've ever seen before. He's tall and thin, and maybe his skin is like tissue paper thin. You can see the veins kind of pulsing beneath it. Something about this kid looks off. He doesn't look like healthy. Maybe his hair is even kind of falling out in patches. This kid comes in, he sits next to you. You notice he has a bandage wrapped around one arm. You want to be friendly, so you say, "You must be new here." And the kid says to you, it's me. And you realize this is a kid you've known your entire life. Let's call him Mark. It's Mark. And just like everybody else over the summer, he has completely transformed as well, but not in a good way. Something about him feels off. And so a couple weeks later, you're sitting there in biology class, and your teacher, Mr. Hernandez, says, everybody open your textbooks to page 27. So you open up to page 27, and there's a picture of a brain. And Mark looks at the picture of the brain. He's sitting next to you, and a little drool trickles out of his mouth, and he just stares at this picture of the brain. And then every day for the next couple weeks, when Mark comes into class, he opens up to page 27, stares at the brain, and drools just a little bit. And he still has this bandage around his arm. Whatever's happened to his arm, it doesn't seem to be healing. And then maybe one day, Mark comes into class, Mr. Hernandez at the front lights a Bunsen burner, and as soon as Mark sees the flame, he jolts back in his chair, grunts a little bit, and he stands up and he runs out of the room. And then maybe another day, Mark comes into class and he's not walking normally anymore. He's sort of limping. You realize as he walks to the chair, he's lumbering. And then you put all the clues together. Staring at the brain, lumbering, running away from fire. You realize what's happened to Mark over the summer. Zombie, you think. And you realize the kid sitting next to you in your 6th grade biology class, over the summer, he became a zombie. Anyway, so that's a story that I'm playing with and working on a little bit, and hopefully it'll end up in my next book.
Oh my gosh, that was so good. What movie scared you that wasn't supposed to scare you?
Okay, this is embarrassing, but I'm going to tell you the truth. It's not a movie, it's a cartoon character. I think SpongeBob SquarePants is really spooky. I don't think I've ever seen a full episode of SpongeBob SquarePants, but I find the character to be sort of chilling. He has these like freakishly big eyes, and he has this energy level that is like through the roof, and something about that character really creeps me out.
What spooky books did you read growing up?
My favorite spooky book I read when I was a kid is titled Something Wicked This Way Comes by Ray Bradbury. It's this just terrifying story about these two boys and kind of an evil carnival that comes to town. This evil carnival comes to town and starts like kind of seducing away all of these people in the town by offering the thing they most want. And these two boys have to defeat this evil carnival man. And there's this witch that works for the carnival who has her eyes sewn shut. And she is just the most terrifying character. And I remember reading this book as a kid and just being completely enamored with this witch character and just how terrifying that I thought she was. So Something Wicked This Way Comes by Ray Bradbury is one that I remember reading as a kid. I read a lot of Hardy Boys as a kid, and those aren't particularly spooky books, but they have like creepy, spooky elements built into them, and I read a lot of those when I was a kid. And I read a lot of mystery books as well when I was a kid, and they often will have some sort of chilling or creepy, ghoulish moment built into them. So a lot of mystery books, a lot of Hardy Boys, but if you really want to be creeped out, Something Wicked This Way Comes by Ray Bradbury. It's brilliant.
You told us a little bit about your two books. Is there anything else that you would like to share about Out to Get You or Only If You Dare? By the way, I love that they're 13 tales, and it reminds me of Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark, and which I loved growing up. And I remember reading those and scaring myself. So, yeah, tell us about those.
Well, I'm so glad you mentioned scary stories to tell in the dark, because that's also a really big influence in my writing. I like to think of my book as like scary stories to tell in the dark crossed with The Twilight Zone. I don't know if you remember this old TV show, The Twilight Zone. I grew up watching this with my dad, and I've certainly been influenced by The Twilight Zone. I'm really interested in my books in taking ordinary, everyday things that we don't think are spooky and making them seem really spooky. So there's a story in Out to Get You about the school crossing sign. You know the school crossing sign? It's black and yellow, and it has a boy and a girl in a crosswalk. I have a story about the boy and the girl that are trapped in that school crossing sign. I have a story about the haunted paper towel dispenser in the boys' bathroom. My next book, Only If You Dare, I have a story about a snowman that will not melt. So I like to take ordinary, everyday things like an ice cream cone, a microwave, and see if I can write stories that turn these ordinary, everyday things from typical things into things that are really creepy, so that the next time you see a school crossing sign, you might think, what about that boy and that girl that are trapped in there? Or the next time you see a paper towel dispenser in the bathroom, you are kind of creeped out a little bit. I'm trying to take the ordinary, everyday things of the world and make them seem mysterious or interesting or filled with wonder, because I believe the world we live in is filled with wonder.
Ooh, I love that. Why do you think people like to be scared?
I think there's an adrenaline rush that you get when you're kind of creeped out, and the feelings of like the prickles on the back of your neck that you get when you're scared, or if you've ever been so scared that like the hairs on your arms stand up. There's a kind of pleasure that comes, kind of an adrenaline kick that comes from being that frightened. But the problem is, in real life, when you get frightened enough to have those things happen, it's usually because something really bad is happening. I like stories, scary stories, because they give us those feelings, that prickle on the back of our neck or our hair standing up on our arms, without us having to be in any real danger, right? We know that we're safe when we're reading a spooky story. So we get to have the emotions of being creeped out without the danger that often comes with being creeped out.
Our viewers love to hear about the writing friendships and the community of writers. So tell us about the Spooky MG group and what you love about it.
Okay, sure. I belong to a group of writers. We're the Spooky Middle Grade Writers, Spooky MG. If you just did a Google search for Spooky Middle Grade, I'm sure you would be able to find our website. This is a collection of about 25 writers who all write spooky stories for kids. And we call it Spooky Happy Hour. We get together once or twice a month on Zoom and just hang out and talk and ask each other questions about the publishing industry and what we're working on and what our writing is like. We have a really active Facebook Messenger chat that we participate in. We arrange class visits with each other. We visit classrooms over Zoom, and we offer free visits to any school teachers that want us to come into their classroom, and we'll usually have about 3 or 4 of us on a Zoom call. And my favorite thing about being a part of this group, it's so refreshing. Writing is hard, and the publishing industry, it's a difficult industry. And having friends who understand the publishing industry and understand the struggles of writing and revising, sometimes you'll just put a message in the chat saying, here's what I'm struggling with right now, and to have all these people respond and commiserate and say, I understand exactly what you're going through, it's incredibly supportive. And I really love being a part of this group. So you ought to check out the writers in this group, Spooky Middle Grade. If you just did a Google search, you'd find our webpage.
I have had the Spooky group multiple times visit my classroom, and I love that we can have a variety of authors. We have more than one. You all know each other so well, and we can tell whenever we're watching, which I think is great for the kids to see that there are communities. There are, everyone has each other's back, and it's a lot of fun to watch. So I'm so glad that you're part of it, and I'm so thankful that there is a spooky group.
I love how you phrase it. We have each other's backs, because that says it perfectly. This is a group that really does have each other's backs. We read each other's work. We support each other creatively. And that is crucial to your development as a writer. If you want to write, I think you have to find a community of people who have your back and will support you on this creative journey.
What is your biggest fear?
My biggest fear is that I have 4 kids, and my biggest fear is that something horrible will happen to one of my kids and I won't be able to help. So that they'll make a decision that will put them in danger, or that they will do something or be placed in some situation and I, their dad, won't be able to help them. I think that's my biggest fear. That's pretty heavy, so maybe that, and also snakes. I do not like snakes. Nope, I am not here for the snakes. And here's the thing. My family, we actually have a pet snake. My son has a corn snake, keeps it in like an aquarium in his room. We have a pet snake, and I am not about the snake. I don't think I've ever held the pet snake, and I think my children are onto me. They're like, Dad, how come the snake's name is Pumpkin? How come you never hold Pumpkin? I'm like, oh, no reason. I'm just not in the mood. I'm terrified.
All right, do you have a secret to share?
Okay, here's my secret, and I hope it doesn't get me in trouble, because my secret is this. I do not like potatoes. And here's the thing. I've lived in Idaho for 17 years, and I can't stand potatoes. Mashed potatoes, scalloped potatoes, blah. I don't like any of them. I'll eat potatoes in chip form and French fry form. Then I can handle potatoes, but mashed potatoes I think are disgusting. The texture, I cannot handle mashed potatoes. And I live in Idaho. Don't tell the other Idahoans.
All right, what's one of your guilty pleasures?
Baked goods. Cookies, cupcakes, donuts. I am all about baked goods. Our grocery store here in my town that we go to has what's called a half-off bakery. So if they go a day without selling something in the bakery, they stick it in the half-off bakery, which is back in a dark corner of the grocery store. And I am every time we're at the grocery store, I always got to go check and see what's in the half-off bakery. If they have like a cake or a box of donuts or something. Baked goods.
Our viewers love to hear about your cringy middle school moments. So, do you have one that you can share with us? Because middle school is just cringy in general.
Okay, so this is the cringiest. So, my 6th grade Valentines dance. So, they ended my middle school like an hour or so early so that we could all go down to the gym for the middle school Valentine's dance on Valentine's Day. And the first girl I ever asked to slow dance with was at this 6th grade middle school Valentine's dance, and she had like really big hair. And so we went out to the dance floor and put my arms around her and started dancing with her, and then I inhaled, and her hair was so big that when I breathed in, some of her hair like went into my mouth. I inhaled some of her hair, and it was so gross. I started like gagging and I coughed. It was like, because I had this girl's hair in my mouth, and it just ruined, there's just no recovery from that. After you inhale a girl's hair that you're dancing with and you start gagging, there's no recovery.
That was good. That's good. I'm sorry that happened to you, but that was good.
It sort of traumatized me. I was kind of like, this dancing thing is way too complex. There's way too many things to think about, and I don't think I ask a girl to slow dance again for like another year.
Has something embarrassing ever happened during an author visit?
Okay, yes. Also involving a girl. So when I was in 6th grade, I had a really big crush on a girl. I'm not going to use her real name. I'm going to call her Caroline Spencer for the purpose of this story. So I had a huge crush on this girl we're going to call Caroline Spencer. She and I were both in the middle school orchestra. I played the cello and she played the violin. And so we would sit on opposite sides of the orchestra room, but we'd sit like in a horseshoe so I could like play my cello and like look at her. And so she was just like 12 feet away. and the only thing between us was like Mrs. Pratt, like the meanest orchestra teacher on the planet. And I would sort of gaze at this girl that I had this huge crush on when I was in middle school. And so in Out to Get You, I have a story about a boy who has a crush on a girl. And in the story, her name is Caroline Spencer. That's why we're using that made-up name today. And I based Caroline Spencer, his crush on Caroline Spencer in the story, I based that on my crush on this girl that I had in 6th grade. Well, I used to do, when I do school visits, I would tell kids about this crush that I had on this girl. And I would say things, I'd really ham up the crush I had on this girl. I'd say things like, oh, Caroline Spencer, it could have been so beautiful between us. And I'd make all these jokes about this crush that I had. And so I go to this school, and I'm setting up a projector, and I'm getting all ready for this presentation I'm going to do in this school, and I'm kind of chatting with this librarian in the library as I'm putting everything together. And I'm going through my head about these jokes I'm going to tell about my crush on Caroline Spencer. And I'm thinking, oh, Caroline Spencer, could have been so beautiful between us, and doing all of this. And then this librarian says to me, Josh Allen, don't you recognize me? And I look up, and it's her. It's Caroline Spencer. It's the girl that I had a crush on in 6th grade. She is the school librarian who has invited me to come to this school. And I realize I cannot possibly tell any of these jokes I can't tell any of these stories. And I have to like kind of rebuild my whole school presentation in my head over like 2 minutes. I just sort of stood there in shock in this school library for like 4 minutes, right? I was just like, oh my gosh, it's her.
This has been such a fun visit with you, Josh. I loved hearing the spooky things and your embarrassing stories. We would like to leave the viewers with a writing prompt. Can you give us a spooky writing prompt?
Sure, you bet. Okay, so I told you that my stories, I'm really interested in taking ordinary, everyday things and making them creepy. And so here's a writing prompt or writing exercise that I do all the time. So what I do is I just look around where I am. So just go ahead and look around where you are right now and pick an ordinary, everyday thing and think about how you could make it creepy. Now, one thing I try to teach young people is that if you want to write a creepy story, here's a trick I use again and again. Take an ordinary, everyday thing and let it behave in a way that it's not supposed to. So, for example, my story about the haunted street sign, the boy and the girl and the school crossing sign. This boy's going to school one day, and suddenly the boy and the girl, he can't remember who's supposed to be in front in this sign. Is it the boy or the girl? And as he looks at it, the boy's in front, but then the next day it seems like the girl's in front. And is that right? Who's supposed to be in front in the school crossing sign, a boy or a girl? And it keeps flipping, it keeps changing. So you could take an ordinary, everyday item like a clock. Let it behave in a way it's not supposed to. Suddenly the clock starts running backwards. You could take an ordinary, everyday object like a refrigerator. Let it behave in a way it's not supposed to. You open the refrigerator door, and instead of getting hit with a blast of kind of that wave of cold air, what if you get hit with a wave of hot air when you open the fridge? And then you can start to play with that and see where it goes. So take an ordinary, everyday object. That's my writing prompt. Find an ordinary, everyday object and write a story where it acts like it's not supposed to. It starts behaving in a way it's not supposed to.